Welcome back to another episode of Dentistry's Growing with Grace podcast. Join Grace and her guest of the week as they discuss lessons learned in the industry and explore unique insights into ethical growth.
Hi, and welcome back to Dentistry's Growing with Grace. I am so honored to have a dear friend and colleague, Lynne Leggett, here with me today. Hi, Lynne.
Hi, Grace. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. It's been a while since I've had you on the podcast. How long has it been?
Too long.
I know. It's probably been at least a year, maybe longer. I don't know. Right now we're in an interesting time. It seems like more than ever, people are realizing the importance of having a team, and some people are in a place where they need to rebuild their team. Let's talk about that a little bit today. In your opinion, is skill level the most important thing to look at when you're recruiting or hiring?
No, I really don't, because I think what we found with different team members, no matter what their role is within the office, that in my opinion, you want to hire for a character and then teach the skill. Now, of course, that goes, a hygienist has to have the skill and a dental assistant has to have the skill. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about more of like personality fit. For example, if you wanted somebody to be a treatment care coordinator, you cannot hire somebody that's shy and really introverted for that position, because you want to have somebody that can understand all the personality types, be able to talk to that type, and be able to, dare I say, sell the treatment or get the patient taken care of, because that's not a bad thing. The whole purpose is to take care of the patient and to get them the treatment that's already been diagnosed. So putting the right person in the right position, that's why I say let's hire for character and we'll teach the skill.
Okay, great. So you're saying as long as the general aptitude is there, that,
yes.
Maybe do some preliminary tests to kind of assess their knowledge and make sure that if you need someone with the background, it's there. But more importantly, really look at who they are, what do they value, and try to find that perfect personality, cultural fit as well.
Well, and at the same time, if you think about customer service skills, it sounds really basic, but does somebody understand how to answer a phone correctly? Is that something that you really want to take the time to teach? Albeit when they join your practice, you're going to have to teach them the way that you want it to be done, but you'd like them to come into your practice with, like minimum expectations kind of thing, so they can just start off making an impact in your practice, and the impact needs to be positive, not negative. So that's why I say there's a minimum expectation of what you're looking for, but you've got to hire with that in mind.
Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense. What does a doctor do if he or she feels pressure around hiring?
I know a lot of doctors, that is their HR and things around HR is their least favorite thing to do, right? They want to stay in an operatory as long as possible. If they could stay in an op all day long, they would be so happy and not have to deal with all the other stuff that comes around. But I really sort of cringe when I hear a doctor tell me that their back's up against the wall and they feel pressure, because when that kind of stress is on somebody, A, a warm body is not enough, and B, that kind of stress allows them to make some poor hiring decisions.
I've done that.
Yeah, that's when you really need to dig deeper and try to take your time and find somebody that shares that core belief system with you, because if you really want them to be a contributing team member and not just an employee, then you need to be looking for a higher caliber individual.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm gonna kind of take this in a little bit of a different direction, but sometimes you're in that position where you're really understaffed, and I think that's going to happen to a lot of people coming out of this COVID situation where they're really understaffed, and sometimes you need to find temporary help or piece together a plan that buys you a little bit of time so you can get those right fit people in place.
I couldn't agree
with that.
But I guess I look at it from a different standpoint of if you're looking for tasks to be done, you can be very creative and outsource a lot of tasks. So I don't think a lot of dentists understand all that is available in the marketplace to be able to do that. Do you have to have a hygienist? Yes. Do you have to have an assistant? Well, yeah, unless you want to work by yourself. The answer is yes. Do you have to have multitudes of administrative people? Not really. I mean, things are so much more creative now, but if you don't know that, then again, your back's against the wall, right? And you're feeling that pressure to just hire somebody that comes off the street.
Mm-hmm. And in these situations, it may be a matter of getting a temporary assistant or hygienist while you go through this appropriate hiring process to find those perfect fits. And so
Mhm.
you're gonna see, I think we're gonna see a little bit of a scramble as we all return to work.
I would completely agree with you. And even before COVID happened, there was a lot of scramble just to find qualified people before any of this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hearing so much like yourself that it's gotten even more competitive to find the right people. And it's definitely a challenging time period. There's no question.
Mm-hmm. But with the right creativity and with the right support, whether that comes from a coach or whether that comes from a spouse or both, whatever that looks like, there is no problem that we can't tackle with a plan and with some hard work. So in your opinion, is it all right for the doctor to hire team members without the input of the other team members, the existing team?
The short answer is going to be no to that, but I want to explain why I said it that way. If you've got, and I've seen this happen, where the team is so good and they're a core group that works for the doctor. They are fighting to keep that culture the way that they want it to be, and they can come up with some very creative questions and get the candidate to say things that the doctor may have not even been thinking about. So you can have a team primarily of women that are going to have some intuition that the doctor, if they're male or female, it doesn't matter. They're not going to be looking like other team members are going to be looking at a new candidate. So I always want them to have the opportunity at least to sit down and be a part of the interview process, not necessarily have their opinion make the difference if they're hired or not. But I think when you're truly going to have a team, the rest of the team needs to be involved in who's going to join us. Are they going to be a good fit for us? Are we going to be a good fit for them? Or did you just hire a warm body and we're going to kick the can down the road in 6 months or less than that because it didn't work out?
Yeah. And it's hard because, people tend to put their best foot forward on interviews, and they tend to show and say the right things. And then,
Sure.
Somewhere in that 30 to 60 day time period, definitely within 90 days, you start to see things like absences or being late or not having a good attitude. Those underlying issues sometimes don't come out right away. And so I think just as important as it is to involve the team in that discussion of what makes one of us, how is someone going to fit? What are we? Let's define us. I think it's also important when someone goes, hey boss, this person, I just want you to know this and this and this and this and this and this is happening, and it's disruptive. So just to be open to that feedback. Would you agree with that, or am I way off?
Completely. Because if you really have a true team together and that relationship is already built on trust with the doctor, then they need to listen to what the rest of the team is saying. Now, if you've got a diva or a queen bee, that's a completely different story. But if it's done with the ethics that we're talking about and the truth that we're talking about, then absolutely, you need to have everybody's opinion represented with that. Mm-hmm.
I like how you said if you have a diva or a queen bee. Okay, so a lot of doctors don't know that they have a diva or a queen bee, or they're in denial that they have a diva or a queen bee. Tell me what a queen bee does in a practice. And I know you've seen it so many times, and I've seen it so many times. Can we go off track a little bit and talk about that and how dangerous that can be?
Well, it's completely dangerous and it's disruptive to what you're trying to build. Because to me, as soon as somebody says queen bee or diva or whatever, what that really represents to me, especially as a coach, is somebody who is selfish. And if you are selfish, you're not going to be a team player. So it may manifest itself a little differently in the dental practice setting. Like the remark may be, well, that's not my job. Or maybe they always go, well, hey, Susie, can you help me with this? But somehow it becomes Susie's job to do what it was their original job to do or responsibility to do. And if Susie's a really nice person, she's not going to see it for what it is. Or maybe the queen bee decides to stir the pot and starts looking for, well, you're not treating her like you're treating me, so why are you favoring her? It's just a disruptor, a complete disruptor to the team.
Okay. And it can come to light in so many different ways. You can have a queen bee who really thinks they could run the practice a whole lot better than you and be undermining even your treatment plans with patients. Like, it happens in ways that without, and I'm going to say something bold here, without an outsider evaluating and really getting involved, it could be very hard for the doctor to even identify these issues in a practice.
Absolutely. Because if you think about it, the doctor's going to be in the operatory. They don't know. I mean, honestly, they don't know what happens outside of the operatory when they're in the operatory. So all of these other machinations of all kinds of things are going to be happening literally behind the doctor's back. And unless they trust their team, I mean, that's why I always come back to trust. It's a two-way street. The team has to trust the doctor and the doctor has to trust the team. But, females can be catty. I mean, let's be real. There's some of those out there that are just not going to be team players. And that needs to be dealt with immediately.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to get better.
It doesn't.
It's never going to get better.
It doesn't get better. And it's hard. Sometimes the hardest part is when there's some of your greatest producers, when you have somebody who makes you a lot of money or does great work in whatever area, but they've got this underlying agenda of some sort. Sometimes they're not even aware of it. Sometimes it's just a personality thing. But it's important to be open to the fact that these things are pretty common. Another question for you: Should anyone be hired without things like checking references or background checks or credit checks? Like, how important is this process of evaluation before bringing someone onto your team?
I look at those things as more measured responses or conclusions once you've already decided if you want to hire somebody. So that's why it's at the end of the hiring process, right? So to me, I look at it, it's not going to be 100% effective. There's nothing that's going to be 100%. I can guarantee that this candidate is going to work for you for the next 10 years. We're people, and personalities don't work that way. Is the best thing we have for you to be able to do your due diligence? Absolutely. And one of the things that I'm seeing because of the COVID situation, one thing I'm advising my clients is the clinical team needs to branch out a little bit more, learn more about what was typically administrative tasks, because they may be doing some chairside payments. They may be doing a lot of other things for very creative reasons, but that means that they're going to have to get a credit check if they haven't already had one, because if you're dealing with money, let's be prudent about the responsibility that we're giving, potential team members that we want to hire. The other reason why I look at it that way is because if I've made a decision, I'm looking for a reason to persuade me not to hire them. It's a different way of thinking. But once I've gotten to that point of having like maybe two finalists for the same position, I want something to prove to me yes or no on those two competitors to be able to join my team, if you will.
Right. And once people flip their thinking of what reason do I have not to hire this person, and recognize that you only need one. You only need one reason not to hire someone, and then go on to the next one. Wait until you find someone that gives you that you have no reasons not to hire them. I think that's such good advice.
Or it maybe not a reason, or just a doubt. Maybe there's just something that you're just not 100% sure. Wait till you get that 100% as much as you can. If you have something that you have no doubt on, then go with it and hire that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've always said too, to not hire anyone you can't fire.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if that still holds up, but
Well,
definitely.
everybody's dispensable.
Yeah.
Back to the queen bee, right? They're not going to be able to handle this in the practice unless I'm here handling it. Well, that shouldn't be the case.
The business, the business should be able to operate without any one person.
Yep.
And that's when you have strong enough systems and, the right people in place.
Absolutely.
Very good. Okay. So should the doctor, oh, I love this question. Should the doctor look at a candidate's social media profiles?
I know some people may think this is controversial. To me, it's not. Because if you're going to put up a social media page, regardless of if it's Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, and you make it public to where anybody can see it, what I'm looking for is, are they acceptable posts? Or am I seeing somebody that is partying every weekend where maybe I'm looking at it going, okay, if I'm the dentist and I look at this individual and you had the potential of representing me and my practice, do I really want to see that? Is it good, sound decision making that I'm looking at on somebody's post? And if it isn't, then that's just, again, another flag that you need to take into consideration when you interview somebody. Again, it's all of the whole process, but to me, that is a big red flag.
So if someone is reluctant to do this or saying like, well, isn't that an invasion of privacy, whatever, it's like, it's public information. You should use the information you have available to you to make an educated decision about someone. And again, look for those reasons or those gut feelings that may push you in a different direction. That's going to help you make the best possible choice. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's just part of the equation. It's just one facet of everything else that you're looking at. Does this end all, beat all, everything? No, it's just a part of what you're looking for. So I think that's the difference with some people that come down really hard, Grace, and say, no, you shouldn't look at social media, or it is a privacy issue. I'm not basing my decision 100% on that, but it is a factor.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep it into that perception, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Does the environment matter when interviewing a potential team member?
Yeah, I love this question because there's something that I like to do, and I'm probably not the only one that does this, but you can tell when I work with a candidate, when I work with a client and we're looking at a potential candidate, one of the things that I always like to do is for the doctor and myself to take that candidate once we finalized, to the last two, if we will, the ones that we really want to look at, take them out to lunch. Because one of the things that I like to do is get them out of the office environment. I want them in a much more relaxed atmosphere. And I will tell you, and I want to share this story as to why I think this is so important, because I've seen behavior that confirmed this is not going to work for my client.
I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah, I'm going to try to clean it up. Okay.
Don't.
There was one person that we took out to lunch, and oh my, she was so bad. She talked about some very, very personal things with the doctor and I that you wouldn't even do with the girlfriend if you were drinking, kind of personal things you wouldn't talk about. You know what I mean? That's the cleanup part. Okay, we're over that. So just use your imaginations. And
it's already there. It's already there.
It's there. The picture's set. So she brought it up. She was the instigator and started saying these things. But then that wasn't necessarily the worst part. It was how she treated our waitress. How she completely went off being condescending and all kinds of things to other patrons there in the restaurant. And it was obvious, okay, you had a diva, you had a superiority complex, you had somebody that obviously was not going to treat the general public or his potential patients the way that they should be treated. Because if you're doing this in front of us and we're looking at you and we're, again, that's why I like to take them out of the office environment, right? Like you said before, here's the perfect candidate. Here's how we're looking at it. Get them out and see how they work in a completely different environment. Now, I will tell you, I do it a little differently. There are times when if I'm really not sure and they're just sweet as pie, right? They're too good. I will purposely, after we place an order, I will go excuse myself to go to the restroom, tell the waitress to bring something that she did not order. The applicant didn't order, and I want to see how they work with it. I mean, it's just lunch. I mean, not if there's any allergies, or I'm not saying that.
You're not trying to kill anybody.
I'm not trying to kill anybody, so don't hold that against me. Don't use that and say Lynne Leggett said do this, because that's not what
I love it though. I love that, because you've got people that will just sit there and not say anything. And that's as dangerous as the person who will go off on the server.
Exactly. And see, that's what I'm looking for. It's like, where on the spectrum are you going to end up on how you handle it? And there was one applicant, the doctor, he knew what I was going to do. He goes, I hate it when you do this. I'm like, dude, this is how I'm going to roll. So just deal with it, because we need to know, because she was so good. I said, she can't be this good. And you know how she handled it, Grace? She goes, and she was very sweet. And she said, she goes, Miss, I think there was a mistake that occurred, because I ordered this, but if it's going to make the rest of the table wait to get something else, our time, we can't be here forever. So I'll eat this, but I just wanted to let you know, is there any way that I can get something else? Or, is there anything that we can do? And I thought, you're concerned about the doctor and I and our time. That was the most creative answer I had seen to that. And it was brilliant. And she got the job.
And it was honest.
Yep. But it was the emotion and the way that she handled it was perfect. It was done with grace. It was done with patience. It was done appropriately. Word choice was appropriate. Eye contact, all of those nonverbal
you can't
things that
teach
can
that.
scream.
And you can't teach that. That is someone's personality. That's their core. That's what's inside, that's on display. Okay, so Lynne, I just have to, and we're not done. We have a couple more questions, but I just want to say before I forget, thank you for sharing all this information, because I'm actually getting a free coaching session right now and I'm taking notes. So, all right. But I have my own I'm going to have a hard time not answering the next question as well, but I will do my best.
Okay.
So why should you create a practice culture first before you hire?
Okay, I look at culture probably different than a lot of people. So let me define that, and then I'll go into a little more detail. Culture to me is what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. That to me is the bigger meaning of culture. And whoever you hire needs to be able to fit within those parameters, because they need to understand from the dentist owner, what is that culture? What's acceptable and what's unacceptable? So you've got to have that piece first before you hire somebody to join into that culture. So it's a little different with that, but to me, that culture also has to relate to your core values, which of course is going to be directly related to your mission and your vision of your practice. So I know that's a lot of words or key phrases that people throw around, but to me, they're more than just phrases. It really is how you have to craft and how you have to look at your practice to be able to scale and do the things that a lot of dentists want to be able to do.
Is it okay if I add to that a little bit?
Oh, I could talk about, in fact, I give presentations on this. I can speak hours about this, but go ahead.
Okay, good. So, and this is just kind of a personal story, which I think it's kind of interesting. So sometimes there are aspects of your culture or what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I love that definition, by the way. Sometimes there are aspects that you haven't really taken the time to define, but they just exist. Like for instance, if you come into my office at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, it's pretty quiet because people have a lot of work. We're very hard workers in my business, and it's just how we are. It is what it is. You've been there, right? You've seen it. Yeah. And it's almost creepy quiet how hard people are working. And I had hired someone who just didn't pick up on the culture at all. It was like she was working in her own little world and did whatever And so I would come in at 9 a.m. and she'd be like eating a bowl of oatmeal at her desk. And I'm like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? I was like, you're on break already? Like, we just got here.
But isn't it funny how people view that? And she's probably thinking, what's wrong? I didn't have breakfast, so I'm just, multitasking here, doing my work and eating whatever. And they don't see that that could potentially be a problem with the culture that you're trying to build with your company.
I mean, you would think that just seeing that nobody else is at their desk eating, you would think that that would be enough to set the culture. Have you ever seen situations where you had to really define things for people? Have you seen the situation where someone just seems oblivious?
Oh yeah. I've seen where well, I don't want to pick particularly on hygienists, but that's the example that comes to mind with when I was on site with a client one time, was seeing how, and this doctor had two different hygienists. So it was really interesting to compare and contrast how they both worked within the office. And they had both been there around the same amount of time, it was about 5 years for each of them. And one was just so diligent about notes were going to be done in the operatory. And, she was very systematic with how she did things. The other one just didn't put anything into the computer and waited to the end of the day. Now, of course, if you're paying them the same, if they're hourly, then who's going to end up with more hours? The one that streamlined processes in the operatory and did what they did during each time, or the person that waited toward the end of the day to be able to do notes? And it became very apparent when I started looking at all the numbers of the practice, the divergence in how they were being paid. So we had to have it wasn't quite a come to Jesus moment, but we had to redirect how hygiene was being done in the office, because there's a certain amount of that is, you have your creativity. You are the hygienist. You are a partner, a clinical partner to the doctor. And I love hygiene. They don't just clean teeth. And I hate that. It's not just a cleaning. And we can talk about hours about that. But there needs to be similar behavior in all the different team members that are hired and how they do things. So yeah, and she was milking the clock. And once I pointed it out to her, it was amazing how quickly her process changed. But nobody said anything.
I think that's important. I mean, a lot of people don't necessarily stop to think about efficiency and the impact that it has on a practice, because they're doing they're working. And employees often think that as long as I'm working, I'm not technically wasting time. They don't always make that full connection of true efficiency and organization and how important that is.
And that's the difference between somebody being an employee and somebody that's being a team member.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally different beings.
And when I say employee, I mean non-owner. I mean anyone that's a non-owner. You don't always think about those things, but yeah, I agree completely. Okay, so let's say now you found that person, you hired them. What do you do next?
Well, I'll tell you the one thing that a lot of dentists forget to do, and it happens all the time. Hiring is really just the first step. Now, what do you do with them? Because if you don't have a plan to onboard them to your practice, then you're throwing them to the wolves, and that's not fair to them. It's not setting them up for success, and ultimately it's not setting up the practice for success. So having, you've got to be able to teach them, like I was giving an example before when we first started talking about, you may have a dental assistant or a hygienist that has a skill set outside of your office, but when they come to your practice, you need to teach them how it needs to be done in your practice and your expectations and those things, because it may not be what they did at a previous practice. I used to be a project manager in the transportation industry. So I like to reverse engineer all kinds of things. And this is one of those things that I will reverse engineer all the time. But let me explain. So you have, because a lot of people don't think about onboarding like this. That's why I say this. If you think about who your dream employee would be and what they would do in each role and responsibility, and then back that up with task, detail, what does it look like, break it down into each individual task, then it gives you a better idea of, hey, what does that job description really need to look like? And what do I really need to teach at each point? What do I need to teach for this particular job? You're going to start to see patterns develop with all of them. So that is what will create your onboarding process for this new team member that joins your practice.
And someone right now somewhere is going, I just don't have the time for all of this. How am I going to do it? I'm going to let that roll right into the next question. Why should you reach out to a dental coach to help you with the hiring process?
Because, you know, they all think that they can do things on their own. You're right. And they went to dental school, and that is what they wanted to focus on. But we're talking about being a business owner now. And that's why I went to business school. And since I coach, I actually know more about how to actually hire and get that person to your practice. But then how do you assimilate that individual into the rest of your team? That's one thing, you know, I love to be able to teach dentists. I teach leadership through coaching. So if I can teach you how to coach your team, because everybody knows what a coach does, whether you played sports or whether you watch on TV when we actually had live events and different things to watch, but we will again. So it's all going to be okay. But you have a visual idea of what a coach does. I want to teach dentists how to be that coach because they already have that innate education and wanting to be a teacher, because they teach patients every day. This is how you take care of your mouth. This is what you do. I want to take those innate abilities that dentists already have. So leadership is not such a foreign concept, and get them more comfortable with being able to coach and being able to see these things from a different perspective and a different lens, so that they are more successful on the business owner side of their practice, not just the dentistry.
The other thing I just want to mention really quick too is, you know, even if you have, say, a business degree and you've studied these things, or you've taken courses in the past to coach your team or to be that leader that you know you can be, we know what happens in business. And there are times where it just gets overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And Lynn, have you ever seen that situation where the doctor's like, I've been telling them this for months or years, but now that you've come in, they're going to hear it from you differently than from me? Have you seen that?
But you know, the funny thing is, one of the things that I do with dentist owners is, if you want somebody to come in and change the team, that's one aspect. But if the leader is not going to be a leader, and you're not going to do the things on a daily basis to hold your team accountable, to be able to make sure that they do the things that you're asking them to do, then that really doesn't work. Because what I really find, Grace, is most dentists, they're lacking a system to be able, the accountability just wigs them out entirely, because they have no idea. They know what to do, but they don't know how to do it. And then it becomes overwhelming, because if they don't naturally know how to do it, then it becomes this huge obstacle that they don't know how to get around it. When I teach them how to get around it and how to organize their time with that, it's an aha moment where they go, oh my gosh, how did I not know that? But you know, you're not supposed to know everything. And dentists are so used to being perfect, God bless them. And I'm glad that they're perfect, but your business ownership is, as you know, is not a perfect science.
No, it's not. And yeah, I agree so much with that. And so much with the fact that sometimes you just need some extra support. It doesn't mean you're not good at it. It doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing. It just means that you want to grow quicker. You want to get there quicker, and you are willing and open to let someone help you with that. So with that being said, Lynn, how can someone learn more about how you can help them in their practice? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, I'll tell you that in just a second. I just want to add something to what you said, because that's one of the first things that when anybody ever reaches out to me, I always want to honor that, because they are so used to being perfect. I always thank them for being open and for me to be able to help them, because making the phone call or sending the email or starting the conversation is the first step. And that's a big deal for a lot of dentists. And I should honor that. And I do appreciate that. The best way to get in touch with me, you can either send me an email. which would be Lynne, Lynne, at victorydentalmanagement.com. And if you forget that, then go to my website and there's a contact form at victorydentalmanagement.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I think this has been one of the most helpful interviews that I've ever done, and just really packed with information that our audience can use right away. Thank you, Lynne. It's always a pleasure to learn from you and talk to you. And I hope to have you back on the podcast very soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Grace. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. You too.